We'll have dinner tonight. That was all Arya Vance said to me that morning, a cold, clipped statement before she left for the office. Like her words were all about the final result, no room for discussion. At 10 a.m., my phone chimed. I glanced at the screen, a new bank balance of $1,500,000. So many zeros. I had to blink and check it 3 times. Once I confirmed it wasn't a hallucination, a grin spread across my face that I couldn't contain. I grabbed a suitcase I packed weeks ago and bolted for the airport. As for dinner, she could eat herself. I wasn't crazy. I'd booked a one-way ticket to the Maldives yesterday. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. From the day I signed that ridiculous marriage contract 2 years ago, I started a countdown. 730 days. The first thing I did every morning was cross a day off my calendar. Now, finally, it was over. The overwater bungalows in the Maldives were everything they were cracked up to be. The turquoise ocean was literally right beneath my feet. Sprawled on a lounge chair on the deck, I felt like I was finally alive again. The past 2 years weren't terrible, but they were far from normal. Living under the same roof with Arya Vance was like having a stranger for a roommate. We had separate bedrooms, separate schedules. She was out before sunrise and back late at night. I had quit my job and lived off the generous monthly allowance she deposited into my account. The contract was explicit. I was to attend necessary family gatherings and play the part of a loving husband in front of her parents. The rest of my time was my own. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear her leaving and wonder where she was going. Sometimes, I'd see the exhaustion on her face across the dinner table and want to ask if she was okay. Before she became my employer, she was my goddess. I had a secret, hopeless crush on her for 4 years in college. But the contract was a constant reminder. Don't cross the line. It was laughable. Even without a contract, how could I have ever crossed that line? She was a cloud in the sky and I was mud on the ground. We were never meant to intersect. Arya and I were in the same business program in Northwestern, but we were basically strangers. She was the queen of our department, brilliant, from a wealthy family, with a line of guys trying to ask her out that stretched from the lecture hall to the campus gates. I was just a guy, average looks, average grades, average personality. Our only real interaction was during a few massive lecture courses our sophomore year. I sat in the back. She sat in the front. We never spoke a word. After graduation, I became another corporate drone at some downtown firm, working 9:00 to 5 o'clock for a salary that barely covered rent on a decent studio in Chicago. Just when I thought that was my life, Arya Vance suddenly reappeared. It was a rainy night a year after graduation. She knocked on my apartment door. "Ethan Hayes, I need you to marry me." That was her opening line. It took me a full minute to find my voice. "Arya, are you drunk?" "I'm perfectly sober," she said, pulling a document from her purse. "It's a contract marriage, 2 years, $1.5 million. All you have to do is play the part of my husband for my family." And just like that, I moved into her sprawling penthouse. Later, I found out that Leo Chandler had moved overseas. In college, he and Arya were the golden couple. Everyone assumed they'd get married. I guess I was just a stand-in. Whatever. The money was real. A month in the Maldives helped me forget the bizarre, dreamlike past. I spent the next 2 months bouncing between countries before settling into a boutique resort in Bali. The vibe was so relaxed, I even considered leasing a villa and becoming a digital nomad. I started making new friends, meeting a few girls at the hotel bar, but things always fizzled out at the crucial moment. One night, a girl leaned against my shoulder, her perfume thick and cloying. For some reason, I thought of Arya's scent, faint, cool, and clean. What the hell? The thought startled me. Why was I thinking about her? That afternoon, I was in a high-end shop eyeing a pair of swim trunks with a $5,000 price tag. The sales clerk, a Lobo girl with a sweet smile, told me they were a limited edition design from an Italian brand, only 3 pairs in all of Bali. "Sir, your card was declined." She maintained her professional smile. "What? That's impossible." My own smile faltered. A cold dread washed over me. She swiped it again through the terminal. "Perhaps you'd like to try another card?" I shrugged, trying to look casual as I pulled another card from my wallet. "This one should work," I said, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. The machine let out the same piercing beep. The clerk's smile froze. "This one, too? Would you prefer to pay with cash?" "Cash? What cash?" After the wire transfer came through, the first thing I did was book my flight. The rest was all in that account. I pulled out my phone to check my banking app. The balance on the screen was painfully clear, $0. Holy crap! Where was my money? This can't be right, I muttered, my fingers trembling as I refreshed the page over and over. 0. 50 refreshes later, still 0. Sir? The clerk's voice was cautious now. I looked up and saw a flicker of contempt in her eyes. In her mind, I was just another tourist pretending to be richer than he was. 10 minutes ago, I was about to buy the most expensive swim trunks in the store to celebrate my freedom, to celebrate escaping that absurd contract marriage. Just a second, I need to make a call, I said, stepping out of the shop. The Bali sun suddenly felt harsh and scorching, all its previous warmth gone. Standing on a wooden boardwalk, I called my bank's customer service line. The hold music was excruciating. The sea breeze felt sticky, and in the distance, someone laughed, a carefree sound that was a stark contrast to the frantic pounding of my heart. Thank you for calling. How can I help you? The agent's voice was robotic. My account has been frozen. I need to know why. I'll need your account and personal information to proceed. I gave her everything. I could hear typing on the other end, followed by a short silence. Sir, your account has been frozen due to a legal dispute. For more information, you'll need to contact the relevant legal parties. What legal dispute? Who would I have a dispute with? I'm sorry, sir. We are not at liberty to disclose that information. The line went dead. I stood there on the boardwalk, my phone hot in my hand. The sun was beating down on me, but I felt nothing but a bone-deep chill. $1.5 million, gone? I could only think of one person who could do this. Arya Vance. Only she had the power to freeze my accounts. Was this some kind of revenge? Because I left without saying goodbye? Because I ditched the last dinner she proposed? I was shaking with rage. For 2 years, we lived under the same roof, and the total number of words we exchanged probably wouldn't fill a page. The contract was over. What the hell did she want now? Are you enjoying yourself, Ethan? A crisp, cool voice, one I knew all too well, came from behind me, dripping with its usual condescending tone. I spun around. She was backlit by the sun, and I had to squint to make out her silhouette. Arya Vance stood there in a simple white linen dress, the sea breeze catching her long hair and the hem of her skirt. She was barefoot on the wooden planks, her ankles slender and pale. I had never seen her like this in 2 years. This wasn't the CEO in a bespoke power suit with her hair in a perfect chignon. This was a woman on vacation, but the casual attire did nothing to soften her. In fact, the look on her face was more dangerous than I'd ever seen it. What are you doing here? My voice was an octave higher than normal. Arya didn't answer right away. She walked toward me, her gaze landing on the expensive swim trunks in my hand. She reached out, and I instinctively pulled back, but she plucked them from my grasp anyway. Versace, limited edition, she said, glancing at the tag, a strange smile playing on her lips. Good taste, Ethan. A shame you can't afford it anymore. You froze my accounts. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Clever boy. She handed the trunks back to the clerk hovering behind her. Wrap these up. Put on my account. The clerk's expression shifted instantly from disdain to reverence as she scurried back into the shop. I stared at Arya, 2 years of repressed anger boiling over. On what grounds? The contract is over. That money is mine. What gives you the right to freeze my account? The contract. She shook her head slowly, pulling a file from her tote bag. Are you sure you ever read it carefully, Ethan? I snatched the document from her. It was the agreement we'd signed 2 years ago. The edges of the paper were soft, as if it had been handled many times. I flipped to the last page, to my signature, and saw the dense block of fine print next to it. When she first gave it to me, I'd only read the 2 most important clauses, term of 2 years, payment of $1.5 million. Who bothers reading all that legalese? Who would imagine that the CEO of Vance Industries would set a trap in a contract? Article 87. Arya's voice was calm, like a narrator. The term of the contract may be extended at the discretion of the primary party until such time as the primary party unilaterally decides to terminate. Article 92. Should the secondary party, during or within a reasonable time after the conclusion of the contract, engage in behavior that causes material or potential harm to the primary party, the primary party reserves the right to temporarily freeze all related compensation. I read the words and my blood ran cold. Reasonable time, material, or potential harm. I knew exactly what those vague phrases meant in a legal document. They meant the power of interpretation was entirely in her hands. You're screwing with me, I said, looking up at her, my voice raw. I'm merely exercising my contractual rights. She took the file back, folded it neatly, and placed it in her bag. I didn't say we were finished. How dare you run? That last sentence torched what little reason I had left. Did I sign a goddamn slavery contract? I stepped toward her, jabbing a finger in her direction. 2 years. I wasted 2 years of my life playing a part for you. Now the time is up, the payment was made, it's over. Do you have any concept of professional ethics? Of basic decency? You son of a, I left. For the next few minutes, I unleashed every curse word I had learned in my 25 years of life. I insulted everything from her arrogant nose to her deceptively casual designer sandals, from her corporation to her ancestors. I called her a control freak, told her she had no respect for anyone, and that she deserved to die alone. Arya, you're a real piece of work, you know that? How many 2 years does a person get to waste on your games? By the end, my voice was cracking. Arya just stood there, listening, her expression unreadable. She didn't even blink. She was like a marble statue, impassively absorbing every insult until I finally ran out of steam, panting. The sea breeze died down, leaving only the sound of the waves and my own ragged breathing. Are you finished? She finally asked, her voice still perfectly level. I just glared at her. Good. She glanced over my shoulder. Take him back. Take who? Suddenly, I felt 2 enormous shadows fall over me. I didn't even have time to turn before a sharp, precise blow landed on the back of my head. As a starburst of pain erupted, the last thing I saw was Arya's cold face, framed by the blinding sun, her white dress fluttering in the wind. She was beautiful as a painting and just as cold as ice. Then, my world went black. I woke up to a splitting headache. Slowly, consciousness returned. First, the familiar feel of the mattress, then a familiar scent. It was the scent of Arya's penthouse. I lived here for 2 years. I knew it better than anywhere else. I opened my eyes to the familiar chandelier, the familiar ceiling, the familiar curtains. I was really back. No, I was dragged back. I struggled to sit up, a dull ache throbbing in my neck. I felt the spot. There was no cut, but it was definitely swollen. I found my phone. 8:20 p.m. A flight from Bali to Chicago is about 18 hours, but with a private jet and time zones, I'd lost at least 10 hours. The bedroom door was closed. I padded over barefoot and turned the handle. It opened, but the penthouse was silent. I made my way downstairs. There was no one around, not even the usual housekeeper. The front door was shut. I tried the handle. Locked. Perfect. I was a prisoner. Imprisoned by my ex-contract wife in her multi-million-dollar penthouse. The rage began to curdle into a sense of the absurd. Arya Vance, the ice queen from college who never gave me a second glance, the CEO who barely spoke to me for 2 years, had just kidnapped me? This was like something out of a trashy romance novel. I tried to calm myself and think back over the past 2 years. We lived together, but separately. Every morning, our housekeeper, Maria, would make breakfast. We'd eat in silence and go our separate ways. At night, she usually worked late while I played video games or read in my room. On the rare weekend, we have to play the happy couple for our family, holding hands at some charity gala. There was one exception. It was during the first winter of our marriage. I came down with a bad flu, high fever, and was delirious in bed. In the middle of the night, I felt someone come into my room. A cool cloth was placed on my forehead and a hand checked my temperature every so often. I forced my eyes open and saw Arya in her pajamas, standing by my bed, her brow furrowed. The medicine is on the nightstand. Someone refilled the water, she'd said, her voice as cool as ever. But she tucked the covers in around me. The next morning, there was a bowl of soup on my nightstand with a note pressed under it. Don't die. The paperwork would be a nightmare. But that was it. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why she would lock me in here. If this was all because I skipped dinner, it was insane. Just then, the sound of a car pulling up outside broke my train of thought. A car door slammed and footsteps approached the front door. The steps were heavy, not like Arya's. I quickly moved back to the center of the living room, adopting a defensive stance. The one good thing to come out of this 2-year farce was that I'd had enough time and money to take up martial arts. I wasn't going to be held here without a fight. The door opened. But it wasn't Arya. It wasn't a bodyguard. It was a man in a casual blazer, handsome with a warm, easygoing smile. I recognized him instantly. It was Leo Chandler, Arya's supposed true love, her childhood best friend, her inseparable partner in college, the man everyone thought she would marry. Right up until he abruptly left the country and she showed up at my door 3 months later. According to the plot of every cheesy novel I'd ever skimmed, this is the part where he's supposed to sneer at me and say something like, "She was never yours. You were just a replacement." Maybe it was the anger or maybe the blow to my head had rattled my senses, but before he could even speak, my fist was flying. "Whoa. Hold on, I just came to," Leo tried to explain, dodging the first punch. I didn't give him a chance. 2 years of frustration, the fresh rage from being kidnapped, it all found an outlet in this moment. I saw him as the source of this entire ridiculous situation. What I didn't expect was for him to block my next move. According to the script, wasn't I supposed to be wiping the floor with him? He wasn't a professional, but he clearly had some training. We didn't exchange words, just fists and feet, grappling from the foyer into the living room, knocking over a chair and sending a lamp crashing to the floor. "Stop. Dude, stop. I'm here to drop off an invitation," he yelled between frantic blocks. "To hell with your invitation." I tackled him to the ground, straddling his chest. "Ethan, stop it." Just as my fist was about to connect with his face, Arya's voice cut through the air from the doorway. My punch froze midair. I looked up. She was back in her work attire, radiating power authority. Behind her stood the 2 thugs who had knocked me out. They moved in swiftly, grabbing my arms and hauling me off of Leo. Leo got to his feet, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. He looked at me and then, to my utter confusion, he started to laugh. "Arya, you actually did it," he said, a note of excitement in his voice. "You've got good taste. At least he can fight." "Are you hurt?" Arya asked, moving to inspect his face. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me. They kidnapped me just to rub their sappy reunion in my face." I struggled, but the bodyguard's grips were like iron. "I'm fine, Ethan. I'm fine, Ethan." "Minor scrapes," Leo said, waving her off. Arya turned to me. "Ethan, what is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" I panted. "I punched your boyfriend and suddenly you're concerned? Then let me go." Leo looked at me with amusement, then raised an eyebrow at Arya. "Boyfriend? Is that how you've been introducing me?" For the first time, a flicker of something like embarrassment crossed Arya's face. I didn't say anything. He assumed. "Sorry, my bad. I should have led with this," Leo said, pulling a red envelope from his jacket. "I just came to drop this off and to finally meet the guy you've been talking about for 4 years." He handed the invitation to Arya. It was bright red with gold lettering. On the front, 2 names were embossed side by side. Leo Chandler and Chloe Chun. "Congratulations." Arya's voice was genuinely warm. "It's finally happening." "Yeah. Took long enough," Leo said. He turned back to me, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "So you really thought Arya was in love with me?" I was speechless. What was happening? And what did he mean? Arya had been talking about me for 4 years. Leo leaned in closer. "Buddy," he whispered, "for 4 years of college, every time she saw you, she'd talk my ear off about it for the next 3 days. Arya's expression, for a split second, was one of pure panic, an emotion I had never seen on her face in 2 years. "Leo, you can go now." "Hold on." I shook off the bodyguard's hands and stepped toward Leo. "What did you just say? In college? Talking about me?" Leo looked from me to Arya and then a look of dawning comprehension spread across his face. "Oh," he said. "Oh, you don't know? Arya's had a thing for you since sophomore year. Leo." Arya's voice was sharp, a command. "I will be at your wedding. Now, please leave." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Leo shrugged, shooting me a complex look that was part sympathy, part amusement. He gave me a nod and then left, the 2 bodyguards following him out and closing the door behind them. Now it was just Arya and me. Her back was to me, her shoulders tense. "Explain," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Arya didn't turn around. "Ethan, the contract is not over. As per the terms, I have the right to determine its end date. I'm not talking about that." I took a step closer. "What did Leo mean? You noticed me in college?" The door suddenly swung open again. Leo stuck his head back in. "She had a massive crush on you since sophomore year, but she's got too much pride to admit it. So, she complained to me about it constantly. Then, her family started pressuring her to get married, and you're the only person she could think of." He rattled off. Then, vanished as quickly as he had appeared. My brain was a blank slate. I looked at Arya. The tips of her ears were bright red. I said nothing, waiting for her to speak. I needed an explanation for this fever dream. Silence. A silence so long I thought she would never speak again. Then, she walked into her study. A moment later, she returned with a picture frame. She handed it to me. I looked down, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a photo clearly taken in secret. The quality wasn't great, and the angle was off. It was me, asleep in a corner of the library. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting a long shadow on the table. I was wearing a black band t-shirt. My hair was longer than it is now, and I was slumped over an open textbook, dead to the world. That was me, sophomore year. Sophomore year, spring semester. Intro to macroeconomics. Arya's voice was soft, like she was recalling a distant dream. You sat 3 rows diagonally behind me. You never spoke up in class, but in the small group discussions, your points were always the sharpest. Once, we were debating market failure, and you said, the real market failure isn't a flaw in the system. It's a flaw in human nature. Even the professor was stunned. I had no memory of this. It was a 300-person lecture. All I remembered was her sitting near the front, while I tried to remain invisible in the back. You remember me? The idea was absurd. We were in the same program for 4 years. I thought you didn't even know I existed. I knew everything about you. She finally looked at me, and her eyes held an expression I'd never seen before. I knew you liked the third-floor window seats in the library, and that you were there every Wednesday afternoon. I knew you only drank iced Americanos with 1 sugar. I knew that when you read, you'd chew on the end of your pen, and when you were thinking, you'd frown, and your right eyebrow would go up just a little higher than your left. My breathing stopped. These were details I didn't even know about myself. What? I couldn't find the right word. Why didn't you just tell me? Why go through this whole ridiculous contract marriage? Arya gave a sad smile. Because I didn't know how to start. Hi, I'm Arya Vance. I've been watching you for a while now. It sounded like a bad pickup line. She paused. And besides, you never looked at me. Not once. Even if I sat right next to you. Even if we were in the same group. Your eyes just passed right over me. I wanted to argue, but she was right. The Arya Vance of college was the untouchable queen of the business school. Guys like me didn't have the nerve to look her in the eye, let alone imagine she would ever notice us. So, you used a contract marriage as an excuse? A wave of dizziness hit me. You spent $1.5 million just to get close to me? Not entirely, she said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. My family was pressuring me to get married. I needed a husband to deal with them. And when I thought about who that could be, there was only one person in my mind. But what about Leo? I had to ask the question that had bothered me for 2 years. Everyone said you two were a perfect match, that you would get married. Leo is my childhood friend. He's the closest thing I have to a brother. Arya said, shaking her head. We were never in love. People just like to create their own fairy tales. You want a broad to be with the person he really loves, his fiancée, Chloe. These past 2 years I started my voice strained. Why didn't you tell me? Why live under the same roof for 2 years and not say a single word? Arya looked up, meeting my eyes directly. Because I was scared. Scared of what? Scared that if you knew the truth, you'd feel deceived. Scared you were only staying because of the contract. Scared. She hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. Scared that you didn't like me. That last sentence was as light as an exhale. Hearing it from the impossibly confident Arya Vance felt surreal. And incredibly vulnerable. For the first time, I was truly looking at her. Not as the powerful CEO of Vance Industries, not as the cold, calculating party to our contract, but as a normal woman who could be scared and nervous, and have a crush on someone for years. So, you had me kidnapped? I tried to summon some of my earlier anger, but my voice had gone soft. I'm not good at expressing my feelings, Ethan, she said, standing up and walking over to me. I only know that when I want something, I have to have it. And right now, I want you to stay. And if I say no? Arya's gaze darkened, and she glanced toward the front door. I didn't need a verbal reminder. The image of her 2 bodyguards was crystal clear in my mind. This is illegal imprisonment. Then, call the police, she said calmly, even offering me her phone. I didn't take it. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure I wanted to leave. A 4-year crush in college, 2 years of living together. I'd seen her exhausted after pulling an all-nighter. I'd seen her rare moment of vulnerability when she was sick. I'd even seen the quiet gentleness she showed the stray cat that lived near her office building. I used to think those moments were just my imagination, details that a contract husband had no business noticing. We stood in silence, watching each other as the sky outside turned completely dark. If I stay, I said slowly. It won't be as a contract husband. Arya's eyes widened slightly. Then, as what? I didn't answer. Instead, I closed the distance between us. Close enough to smell the faint, clean scent on her skin. To see the slight tremble of her eyelashes. To feel the warmth of her breath. When did you first start liking me? I asked softly. Sophomore year. October 17th, third floor of the library, by the window, she answered without hesitation. You were helping a girl you didn't know pick up her books after she dropped them. She was crying. And you were comforting her. You were smiling. And your smile was so warm. I remember that afternoon. A girl's backpack had burst open. And her books and notes went everywhere. People just stared. I went over and helped her pick everything up. Her notes had been ruined by spilled coffee. And she was crying. What did I say? Something like the coffee stains just make them look more academic. She had laughed through her tears. It was such a small thing. I didn't even remember the girl's face. But Arya remembered. She remembered the date, the location, and the fact that I was smiling. You know, I said, I used to watch you all the time in college, too. This time, it was her turn to be surprised. Then, why did you never? Because you seemed so untouchable, I admitted. Arya Vance, the Ice Queen, the heiress to Vance Industries, always at the top of the class. And me? Ethan Hayes. Average family, average grades. I didn't even have the courage to talk to you. So, when the contract marriage opportunity came up, you took it, she realized. I thought it was just a transaction, I confessed. I thought you chose me because I was the most unremarkable candidate. The least likely to cause trouble, the least likely to get attached when it was all over. You were never unremarkable, Arya said, her voice full of conviction. In my eyes, you were always the most special person in the room. Your silence wasn't boring, it was thoughtful. Your averageness wasn't mediocrity. It was authenticity. You're everything about you I noticed. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. In the next second, our lips met. The kiss was gentle at first, full of hesitation and years of unspoken feelings. But as I deepened it, she responded fiercely. Her fingers clutching my shirt as if she was afraid I might disappear. As if this was the moment she had been waiting for all these years. After a long while, we finally broke apart, resting our foreheads together. Her breathing was ragged, and a blush colored her cheeks. In that moment, she was breathtaking. So, she asked, her voice trembling slightly, will you stay? I looked into her eyes and saw the nerves, the hope. In this moment, Arya Vance wasn't a CEO. She was just a woman terrified of being rejected by the person she liked. I have 3 conditions, I said. She immediately tensed. What conditions? First, we tear up the contract. I said, holding her gaze. We're equals. Either of us can end this at any time. For any reason. No explanation needed. Arya's expression hardened. You want to reserve the right to leave. No, I corrected, taking her hand. I want to make sure you're keeping me here because you want to, not because you're bound by a document. I want to make sure that if we're together, it's because we're choosing each other. Not because of some legal clause. She watched me for a long moment, then slowly, she nodded. Okay. Second, I continued, my other hand gently brushing her cheek. I want to know everything. Starting from college. Every stupid, secret thing you did because of your crush on me. All of it. Arya's face turned a deep shade of red. That might take a while, she mumbled. We have time. I smiled. You went to all this trouble to kidnap me. Isn't that the whole point? Ahem. And third, I glanced at the front door. Keep those 2 gorillas away from me. She couldn't help but let out a laugh. Done. The situation was finally clear, but I scratched my head. Something still felt off, right? My money. So, about my money? I mean, I'd earned that money with 2 years of my life. I wasn't just going to let it slide. Ari's eyes sparkled. What money? Your money is my money, isn't it? You still have to hear. A shark to the very end. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the stairs. What are you doing? Dinner is almost ready. I turned, giving her a predatory smile. Oh, I'm going to eat.